It was a rainy Thursday evening in downtown Chicago. The streets were wet, the sky was gray, and the city lights reflected on the puddles like small diamonds. Inside La Verita, one of the city's finest restaurants, the atmosphere was warm, elegant, and buzzing with energy. Tables were full of people in expensive suits and fancy dresses. Soft jazz music played in the background. Waiters moved swiftly like dancers, serving wine, steak, and delicate desserts. Among them was Malik, a young black man in his late 20s. He wore a crisp white shirt, black vest, and bow tie. He wasn't just a waiter. He was the kind of person who made you feel seen. He remembered customers' names, joked with the kitchen staff, and always kept his cool, even when the job became stressful. Malik had been working at La Verita for almost 3 years. Every evening he served rich people who rarely even looked him in the eye. But he didn't complain. He was saving money for college. He wanted to study linguistics and become a professional translator. Languages were his passion. He had already taught himself Spanish, French, and a little Italian, just from books, YouTube, and late-night practice after work. That evening, Malik noticed a group of business people enter the restaurant. Their body language screamed, money. One woman in particular stood out. Her name was Catherine Hartley, the CEO of a major global tech company. She was in her 40s, wearing a navy blue power suit and high heels that clicked confidently on the marble floor. She was known for being brilliant and cold. Malik approached their table with a smile. "Good evening, welcome to La Verita. May I get you started with something to drink?" Catherine barely looked up. "Just water. We're waiting for one more person," she said flatly. The others mumbled their orders without much attention. Malik wrote them down carefully and returned a few minutes later with their drinks. As they waited, Catherine pulled out her phone and began speaking in fluent French to someone on a video call. Malik, standing nearby, understood every word. She was discussing a potential partnership with a French company. But there were small errors in her pronunciation. Malik didn't say a word. He knew better than to correct someone like her, but fate had other plans. Just then, a well-known European investor entered the restaurant. The man, tall with silver hair, was a surprise guest, joining the CEO's table at the last minute. He only spoke Spanish. Catherine was visibly annoyed. She clearly didn't speak Spanish well. Trying to impress him, she laughed and said, "We'll manage. I'll get someone to translate." She looked around the restaurant and, with a smug smirk, turned to Malik. "Hey you," she said, waving him over. "If you're so smart, then translate for us. Can you handle that?" The whole table laughed. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. They assumed Malik was just a waiter, a servant, a man who probably didn't even finish high school. Malik's eyes met Catherine's. For a moment, there was silence. He felt the heat of humiliation rising in his chest, but he took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Of course, ma'am," he said with a calm voice. "I'd be happy to help." What happened next would change everything. Malik stepped closer to the table, standing tall. His hands were steady and his face calm. He had faced many insults before, but this one felt different. The way Catherine had said, "If you're so smart, then translate," had the weight of something deeper, an assumption that he couldn't possibly have intelligence because of his job. Or the color of his skin. The European investor smiled politely at Malik, then looked toward Catherine, confused. He said something in rapid Spanish. Catherine laughed awkwardly. "You'll translate that, right?" she said to Malik, waving a hand like she was ordering a dog to fetch a stick. Malik turned to the investor and in flawless Spanish responded, "Of course, sir. She said you would manage without a translator, but she seems unsure now." The investor raised his eyebrows in surprise and smiled. He responded again, faster this time, describing in detail his company's vision, how they expected the partnership to bring in $25 million in revenue over the next year, and how language would be a key factor. Malik didn't blink. He translated every single word, accurately, clearly, and smoothly, back into English for Catherine and the others. His voice didn't shake once. The table went quiet. Catherine gave a tight smile, trying to regain control of the moment. Well, I didn't expect you to actually speak Spanish. I also speak French and Italian, Malik said politely. Would you prefer to continue in one of those? The investor laughed loudly. This young man is more fluent than half the people on your team, he said in English with a thick accent. Maybe you should hire him. Catherine's cheeks turned red. She looked down at her menu, clearly embarrassed. The other executives at the table exchanged glances. One man nodded slowly, impressed. Another leaned forward. Where did you learn Spanish? He asked Malik. Mostly at home, Malik replied. I couldn't afford college yet, but I study every night. I love languages. That answer stunned the table even more. No degree, no formal education, and yet here he was, translating better than trained professionals. Suddenly, Catherine's arrogant confidence seemed thinner, like glass about to crack. But Malik wasn't done yet. He turned to the investor again and asked him in Spanish about the cultural nuances in Latin America that the company needed to understand for marketing. The investor lit up, responding with passion. Malik translated it again, word for word, even including a joke the investor made that had everyone at the table laughing. Not fake, polite laughs, real, genuine ones. The waiter had just taken over the room. The attention slowly shifted away from Catherine, the CEO, and onto Malik, the man they had underestimated, the man they had mocked. He wasn't just translating words, he was connecting people, bridging cultures, showing empathy, intelligence, and strength. And in that moment, something else happened. A woman sitting 2 seats from Catherine, her chief communications officer, leaned forward and said quietly, "Do you have a resume?" Malik smiled. "I do. It's in my locker." She nodded. "I'd like to see it." Catherine looked at her sharply but said nothing. The mood had changed and she knew it. She had mocked someone she thought was beneath her, and now that someone was shining brighter than she was. Malik finished translating the final comments of the investor and stepped back. "Will there be anything else I can help with?" he asked calmly. Catherine looked up, speechless. "No," the investor said with a warm smile. "You've already done more than enough." As Malik walked away, heads turned to follow him, not out of pity, but respect. Behind the kitchen door, Malik let out a long breath. He hadn't planned to prove anything that night, but life had given him a stage, and he had performed with grace, dignity, and quiet power. He didn't know it yet, but that one moment would change the course of his life forever. The next morning, inside the tall glass headquarters of Hartley Global Technologies, Catherine sat alone in her office. The floor-to-ceiling windows gave a panoramic view of the city skyline, but she wasn't looking at it. Her mind was still back at La Verita, back to that moment when the black waiter made her feel like the smallest person at the table. She hated how she felt. Not just embarrassed, exposed. For someone who prided herself on intelligence and control, being corrected in front of an investor had bruised her ego deeply. But more than that, it planted a seed of something she rarely allowed herself to feel. Doubt. Was she wrong? She picked up the file her assistant had left on her desk. Malik Thompson, resume. She opened it. No college degree. Just a high school diploma and some short courses from free online learning platforms. A list of books he'd studied, languages spoken, and a small note at the bottom. Currently studying Japanese and American, sign language. There was also a quote. "I believe language is the bridge between people, and understanding is the foundation of peace." Catherine read it twice. Just then, the chief communications officer, Lena, knocked and entered without waiting. "I hope you're not going to ignore what happened last night," Lena said, sitting across from her. "Because I'm not." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "Malik, that young man you tried to mock, he made a better impression on our investor than you did." Catherine frowned. "He's a waiter." He translated a few sentences. "No, Lena said firmly. He connected. He understood. He didn't just translate words, he translated meaning. Emotion. You saw how the investor responded. He felt respected. Understood. Catherine leaned back. What do you want me to do? Hire a waiter for the boardroom? Lena was quiet for a moment. No, she said. I want you to remember what it means to be a leader, to see potential where others don't. Isn't that what we preach about our hiring values? Catherine said nothing. She hated being corrected, but Lena was right. Her entire brand was built on innovation, disruption, and diversity. Yet last night, she had looked at Malik and seen only a waiter, someone beneath her. Suddenly, a new thought hit her like a wave. How many more Malik Thompsons are out there? People with incredible potential, overlooked simply because they don't wear a suit or speak with a certain accent? She looked at Malik's resume again. No degree, no connections, no privilege, she murmured. Exactly, Lena said. Just talent and heart. Catherine tapped her fingers on the desk. Schedule a meeting with HR. I want to talk about something. Already did, Lena smiled. And Malik's coming here tomorrow. Catherine's eyes widened. What? I invited him. You said he made an impression. I think we owe him a real opportunity. For a second, Catherine hesitated. Her pride still ached. But deep inside, another feeling stirred. Respect. Not just for Malik, but for the courage it took to stand with grace when someone tried to belittle him. Fine, she said at last. Bring him in. Let's see what he's really made of. Lena stood up and walked to the door, but paused before leaving. You know, she said. It's not often I see you speechless, but last night, you were. And for good reason. Catherine didn't respond. She just looked back down at Malik's resume. A waiter had cracked the mask of a CEO, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed. The next morning, Malik stood outside the tall glass building of Hartley Global Technologies, holding a folder with a few printouts, his resume, certificates from free online courses, and a letter of recommendation from the restaurant's owner. He wore his only formal outfit, a clean button-down shirt, navy blue blazer, and polished shoes. He had borrowed the blazer from his cousin. His hands were slightly sweaty, but his posture was straight. He looked up at the skyscraper. It felt like another world. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The security guard at the front desk gave him a curious look, but didn't question him. You're the one here to see Ms. Hartley, right? He asked. Yes, Malik nodded. The guard tapped a few keys and handed him a visitor's badge. 28th floor. Good luck up there. As Malik stepped into the elevator, his heart pounded. He had never been in a corporate office before. Everything smelled like leather and perfume. The air felt heavy with silence. It was so different from the clinking dishes and fast-moving chaos of the restaurant. When the elevator dinged at the 28th floor, the doors opened to reveal Lena, the communications officer, smiling warmly. Good morning, Malik, she said. Welcome. You clean up nicely. Malik smiled, slightly nervous. Thanks, I wasn't sure what to expect. Well, you made a strong impression the other night. People here are curious about you. That's rare. She guided him through sleek glass halls, past rows of people typing on laptops, screens glowing, with data and charts. Heads turned as Malik passed, some whispering, some nodding politely. Finally, they reached a conference room. Catherine was already there, sitting at the head of the table. Today, she wore a dark red suit. Her expression was unreadable. Good morning, Mr. Thompson, she said coolly. Please, have a seat. Malik nodded. Thank you for inviting me. He sat down and laid his folder neatly on the table. There was a short silence. Catherine folded her hands and looked directly at him. You impressed a major investor the other night, she began. That's not easy to do, especially without formal training. Tell me, how did you learn to speak 4 languages? Malik hesitated, then spoke clearly. I grew up in a tough neighborhood. There weren't a lot of opportunities. But I always loved listening to people speak, especially in different languages. I started teaching myself Spanish from old textbooks and YouTube videos. Then French. Italian came later. I couldn't afford college, so I found free resources and stayed up late studying after work. Catherine raised an eyebrow. All on your own? Yes, ma'am. I believe communication builds bridges. I want to become a professional translator. One day, maybe work in diplomacy. I know that sounds like a big dream. It doesn't, Lena interrupted, smiling. It sounds like someone who's already doing it. Catherine looked at Malik for a long moment. You've got the mind, she said, and clearly the discipline. But this is a business world. It's different from restaurants. People here play games. They wear masks. They speak in numbers and strategy. I understand, Malik said softly. But I also know that no matter the language or the setting, people want to be understood. That doesn't change. For the first time, Catherine's face softened. She leaned back, and her voice lowered. You know, I once got mocked for speaking poor French in front of a group of European CEOs. I was 27. I cried in the bathroom afterward, swore I'd never be caught off guard again. Malik didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes said he understood more than words could explain. Catherine tapped her pen on the table. I have a proposal, she said. We're expanding into Latin America. We need someone to help our team with cultural translation, not just the language, but how to connect with people there. You'd work under Lena, part-time for now. We'll sponsor your college education in exchange for your help. Real mentorship, real growth. Malik blinked. Wait, are you serious? I don't joke about business, Catherine said. Malik's throat tightened. For a moment he couldn't speak. The dream he had chased quietly for years had just stepped into the room and extended its hand. Yes, he said finally, his voice shaking slightly. I would be honored. Catherine nodded. Good. Report next Monday and bring that same blazer. Malik smiled. I'll try not to spill coffee on it. The room laughed gently. As he left the conference room, he passed the glass walls that reflected his image back to him. Only this time he didn't see a waiter. He saw a man with a future. The following Monday, Malik walked through the revolving doors of Hartley Global Technologies once more, but this time it felt different. He wasn't just visiting. He belonged. Wearing the same navy blazer and a new pair of dress shoes, bought from the bonus tips he'd received after that memorable night at La Verita, Malik stepped into the elevator with quiet confidence. He carried a notebook, a pen, and a heart full of determination. On the 28th floor, Lena greeted him with a wide smile. Welcome to the team, she said, handing him a visitor's badge with the word intern on it. Temporary for now, but let's see where this leads. Malik nodded. I'm ready. Over the next few weeks, Malik became a quiet force inside the company. He spent mornings shadowing marketing meetings, afternoons helping with Spanish communication materials, and evenings taking online courses the company sponsored. But it wasn't just about translation anymore. One day, during a tense product pitch meeting, the Latin American market team struggled to explain why their campaign wasn't connecting with local customers. They had numbers and charts, but no clarity. Lena invited Malik to sit in quietly just to observe. But halfway through, the head of the Latin American team looked at Malik and said, You've spent time studying cultural language. What are we missing here? Malik looked at the boardroom of executives, took a breath, and spoke gently. You're using formal Spanish with local slang, but the messaging feels like it's written for people, not with them. There's a difference. Respect goes deeper than translation. In some Latin cultures, emotion and community matter more than numbers. Your campaign speaks like a machine, not a neighbor. The room went silent. Catherine, seated at the head of the table, slowly leaned forward. That's the clearest thing anyone has said all day, she muttered. After that moment, Malik was no longer just the intern. People began to seek him out, not only for his language skills, but for his insight. He helped the company navigate cultural misunderstandings, build trust with foreign partners, and even design training programs for employees working across borders. Despite his rising reputation, Malik stayed humble. He still helped the janitor carry his mop bucket when it tipped over. He still greeted receptionists by name and brought extra lunch to the security guard downstairs. He never forgot where he came from, and never let success make him forget the taste of struggle. One Friday afternoon, as he was leaving for the day, Catherine called him into her office. She looked at him differently now, not with curiosity or judgment, but with respect. "I hear you've been invited to speak at the cross-cultural leadership seminar next month," she said. Malik nodded, a little surprised she knew. "Yes, ma'am. They asked me to share my story." "Are you ready to be the face of something bigger?" He smiled. "I already am. I just didn't know people could see it." She studied him for a moment, then stood up and extended her hand. "Congratulations, Malik. As of today, your internship is over. Welcome to Hartley Global full-time, Associate Cultural Strategist." His jaw dropped slightly. "Full-time? With benefits. And a raise," she said with a small smirk. "Let's build that bridge together, Mr. Thompson." As Malik left the office, badge in hand, something washed over him. A strange, warm feeling. Not pride, not even victory. Belonging. And as he passed the mirrored elevator once more, he didn't see a waiter, he didn't even see a translator. He saw a builder of understanding, a builder of change. The once invisible waiter had now become a familiar name within the corporate circles of Hartley Global. Malik wasn't just the guy who could translate 5 languages. He had become the guy who could read the room, read the people, and bring real-world insight to every conversation. His presence in meetings became normal. Executives would pause, mid-pitch, and say, "Malik, does this land well culturally?" Or, "How would this sound to a non-English audience?" His perspective was no longer a novelty, it was a necessity. But even as his career blossomed, Malik stayed grounded. Every Friday after work he visited La Verita, the same restaurant where he once cleared tables and served people who never looked him in the eye. Now, they looked at him differently. The Uwe maitre d' would beam when he arrived. "Table 7's yours, Malik. On the house," she'd say. The staff treated him like a celebrity. Not because he was rich, not because he wore better clothes, but because he had done something few from their world ever got the chance to do. He had crossed the invisible line. One evening, as Malik sipped coffee and looked over presentation notes for an upcoming global summit in Brazil, he heard a voice behind him. "Didn't expect to see you here." He turned. It was Catherine. In a dark gray coat and heels, she looked different, less intimidating, almost human. Malik stood to greet her. "Good evening, Ms. Hartley." She sat across from him without invitation. "You've made quite a name for yourself," she said, glancing at the documents on the table. "Global strategy, cultural architecture, who knew?" He smiled. "You did. Eventually." She gave a dry chuckle. "Eventually. I underestimated you. I won't pretend otherwise." Malik stayed quiet. He didn't need an apology. Her acknowledgement was enough. "I've been thinking," she continued, "about the board of advisors. We've been talking about adding younger voices, more diverse ones, people who didn't take the elevator straight to the top." Malik looked up. "I'm not sure I'm qualified for that kind of seat." Catherine leaned forward. "You're more qualified than some of the people already sitting at that table, because you've lived the other side, and because you remind people like me to stay humble." For the first time, Malik allowed himself to feel the weight of it. Not just the offer, but what it meant. Every insult he had swallowed, every door that had been closed to him, every night spent studying in the back of the restaurant kitchen while grease and smoke clung to his clothes, all of it had led to this moment. He folded the papers on the table, looked at Catherine, and said quietly, "Then I'll take the seat. But I'll use it to pull up more chairs for people like me." She nodded. "That's exactly why I want you there." As she stood to leave, Malik remained seated, staring at the empty coffee cup in front of him. He remembered the first time he had served coffee at this restaurant, how small he felt, how invisible. But now he was being invited to shape the future of a global company, not because he had a degree or a polished resume, but because he had something rarer: character, vision, and the courage to speak when everyone expected him to stay silent. Outside, the city lights blinked. Somewhere in the distance, the world kept moving, unaware of the quiet revolution happening inside one man's life. The day Malik took his seat on the board of advisors was a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire company. It was a symbol that change was not just possible, but necessary. On his first day, Malik walked into the boardroom, the same room where a few months ago Catherine had mocked him. Now all eyes were on him, not with judgment, but with respect. The CEO introduced him to the other board members, some skeptical, others curious. Malik listened carefully as discussions began. Corporate strategies, financial forecasts, global expansions, all the usual language of power and privilege. But then, Malik spoke. He talked about the importance of empathy in leadership. He shared stories from his own life, of moments when he was dismissed, overlooked, underestimated because of his background and skin color. He reminded them that diversity wasn't just a box to tick, but a source of strength and innovation. At first, some members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but slowly, nods appeared. Questions followed. Ideas sparked. Malik's words didn't just fill the room, they opened it. He proposed new initiatives to hire from underserved communities, create mentorship programs, and build language and cultural training for all employees. His passion was contagious. Catherine, sitting beside him, watched quietly. She realized that Malik's influence was changing the company's culture faster than any memo or policy ever could. Outside, Malik's story began to spread. Articles highlighted the waiter-turned-board member, inspiring countless others who felt stuck or invisible. Malik knew his journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more battles. But he was ready, because now he had a voice, a platform, and most importantly, a purpose. He wasn't just breaking barriers for himself. He was building bridges for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, and that made all the difference.